You know those things you've always just sort of accepted as true about how our minds work?
Yeah, those catchy ideas everyone seems to repeat.
Exactly. Well, get ready for maybe a bit of a mental shakeup. Because today, in this deep dive, we're going after some really stubborn psychological myths.
Hmm.
And our secret weapon for getting the real story, artificial intelligence.
Right.
So for you, if you want to get smart on a topic fast without wading through tons of studies, think of this as your shortcut, your like turbocharged path to the latest data-driven insights on what's really going on upstairs.
It really is amazing how these myths stick around, isn't it?
Totally.
They often give these, well, neat and simple explanations for why we are the way we are. And that simplicity, it's just really appealing.
Makes sense.
Plus, you hear them everywhere, right? News, maybe friends.
Yeah.
They just become part of the background noise, part of our shared understanding. And
Oh.
sometimes, our own experiences can even seem to back them up, even if the bigger picture from research looks totally different.
Exactly. And that's where it gets, well, really interesting. Holding on to these old ideas isn't just about having quirky beliefs. It can actually lead us down the wrong path, can it?
For sure. Making decisions based on faulty assumptions, maybe?
Right, or misunderstanding ourselves or others,
Yeah.
especially with mental well-being, and ultimately just not grasping the incredible complexity of being human.
Mhm.
So today our mission is pretty simple. With the help of some seriously smart AI stuff that's been crunching mountains of research, we're going to help you sort the psychological facts from the fiction.
And if you take a step back, it's really clear AI is becoming a huge game changer in how we study the mind.
Yeah. How so?
Well, think about neuroscience. AI algorithms can sift through incredibly complex brain scan data, like fMRI, in ways humans just couldn't, or it would take forever. It's
Wow.
also being used in mental health, looking for patterns,
Hmm.
analyzing everything from how we talk to, say, social media activity, maybe pointing towards certain conditions.
Mm.
We're even seeing AI tools helping out with therapy. And in education, AI is helping to personalize how people learn.
And the sheer scale of what AI can handle is just mind-blowing, isn't it?
Oh,
A
absolutely.
typical psych study might have, what, a few dozen people, maybe 100?
Right, if that sometimes.
But AI can look at data from millions. It can spot these tiny connections, trends,
Yeah.
stuff that would just be invisible otherwise.
Exactly.
Okay, ready to jump into some myth busting then?
Let's do it.
Let's start with a big one you've definitely heard. We only use 10% of our brains.
Ah, yes. The classic. It's incredibly persistent, this idea that like 90% of our brain power is just sitting idle,
Yeah.
untapped potential.
Yeah, sounds good.
It does. But what the AI-driven analysis of neuroimaging, like that fMRI data we mentioned, consistently shows is, well, activity all over the brain, even when you're just chilling out.
Wait, really? So even when I feel like my brain's off duty, it's actually fully powered up?
Pretty much, yeah. Every single region seems to have a function. And these advanced AI models, they're helping us map how all those different parts connect and talk to each other with way more precision than ever before.
Huh.
It just wouldn't make much evolutionary sense,
Yeah.
to develop these huge energy-guzzling brains if 90% was just extra weight.
That really does make you think about it differently. Okay, myth number 2. The whole left brain versus right brain idea.
Oh yeah, the analytical versus creative split.
Totally. I always figured, logical people are left brain, artsy types are right brained.
That's definitely the popular take.
Mm-hmm.
But again, when AI looks at brain imaging data,
Mm-hmm.
the picture that comes out is, well, more nuanced.
Okay.
So yes, there is brain lateralization. Certain functions might be more dominant in one hemisphere, but almost every single thing we do involves both sides working together.
So it's not strictly one or the other.
Nope. Things like language or music,
Mm.
even problem solving,
Mm.
they aren't just filed away on one side, they're distributed across different brain areas involving both hemispheres.
So if I'm trying to do a tough crossword puzzle, well, I don't know, humming a song, both my logical left and my creative right are chipping in.
Exactly. It's all about teamwork between different areas across the whole brain,
Mm-hmm.
even for things we might intuitively assign to just one side.
Huh. I'll never look at crosswords the same way.
Uh,
Okay, next. Lie detectors. Polygraphs. You see them in movies all the time. They seem pretty solid, right?
well, the traditional polygraph measures things like heart rate, sweating,
Mm.
physiological stuff. That's what most people picture.
Right.
But AI is now being used to look at much subtler cues, tiny, fleeting facial expressions, micro-expressions, or even patterns in how we speak.
Okay. And
And what the research suggests is that these AI tools might actually be more accurate at spotting potential deception than polygraphs. Polygraphs have a known issue with false positives.
Wow. So AI could potentially be a more objective truth teller. That feels a bit sci-fi.
It definitely opens up some really interesting, maybe complex discussions about how we figure out truthfulness.
Yeah, no kidding. All right, moving on. Something I definitely remember from school, learning styles.
Visual, auditory, kinesthetic. VAK.
Yes. The idea that you learn best if stuff is presented in your specific style.
Super widespread belief.
Uh-huh.
But when AI analyzes actual student test performance and how engaged they are with different materials, the data just doesn't really back it up strongly.
Seriously. So all those what's your learning style quizzes were maybe not that helpful.
The evidence hasn't found a consistent link between someone's preferred style and how well they actually learn. It seems like what really matters more is the teaching strategy itself and, the subject matter being taught.
Not try and match it to some assumed style.
Exactly. The focus probably should be more on just presenting information clearly and engagingly, regardless of whether someone thinks they're a visual learner or whatever.
That makes a lot more sense, actually. Okay, let's talk memory. I always kind of pictured my memory like a video recorder, just, faithfully capturing everything.
That's a very common metaphor. But AI analysis of how we actually recall things shows it's, well, a much more dynamic process.
How so?
Memory isn't like a perfect recording you just replay. It's actually reconstructive. Every time you remember something, you're kind of rebuilding it.
Rebuilding it?
Yeah, and because of that, our memories are surprisingly flexible. They can be easily influenced by suggestion, by our own biases, even by misinformation we encounter later.
Whoa. So even my really vivid, clear memories, they might not be 100% accurate. That's kind of unsettling.
It does highlight how fallible memory can be, yeah. Our minds actively piece together the past, and those pieces aren't always perfect copies of what happened.
Okay, this next one feels really important. The idea that mental illness is just a chemical imbalance, like depression is simply low serotonin.
Right, that's a huge oversimplification of some incredibly complex conditions.
I figure.
When AI looks at massive amounts of patient data, considering everything from environment, genetics, trauma, lifestyle, all of it, it shows that mental illnesses are multifactorial. There are lots of interacting factors.
So it's rarely just one chemical being off.
Very rarely that simple, yes. Think of it less like a simple switch being flipped and more like a really intricate network with many different things contributing. It's a much more complex web.
That nuanced understanding must be crucial for, diagnosis and treatment.
Absolutely. It changes how we approach things significantly.
Okay, here's another one I bet a lot of people assume. Men and women think in totally different ways. Like, our brains are fundamentally wired differently based on sex.
That's a very common stereotype.
Yeah.
But AI models trained on huge data sets, MRI scans, language using it, they're telling a different story.
Oh.
The research indicates there's actually more variation in cognitive patterns within men as a group and within women as a group than there is between the average man and the average woman.
Get out of here.
Really? Yeah. And often, the specific situation or context plays a much bigger role in how we think than our gender does.
So those classic stereotypes about, male brains and female brains, not so accurate.
The data strongly suggests our brains are much more similar than different. Circumstances often drive the differences we observe more than biology does.
Let's shift to intelligence. I always heard IQ is pretty much fixed. You're born with it, can't really change it much.
That's definitely been the traditional view. But AI is helping to refine this too, especially through cognitive training programs.
How?
These AI-enhanced programs can adapt to how someone's doing. And they've shown that, yes, improvements in things like working memory and problem-solving skills are possible, especially, it seems, in younger people.
Huh. So our intelligence isn't totally set in stone. We can actually boost some cognitive abilities with practice.
The evidence points that way, yeah, particularly with targeted mental exercises and training.
Okay, now for something we all think about, happiness. I've heard this idea that, good things happen, bad things happen, but eventually you always bounce back to your baseline happiness level, a sort of set point.
That's the hedonic treadmill theory, exactly.
Yeah.
But AI analysis of data from things like mood tracking apps is giving us a slightly different picture. It's showing our long-term emotional states might not be quite so rigidly fixed. Things like the habits we build, how strong our social connections are, even nutrition. These can actually lead to lasting shifts in our overall happiness.
So we're not just doomed to return to the same level. We actually have some real agency in shaping our long-term well-being. That's
Really?
actually really good news.
It is. It emphasizes the impact of our choices and what we actively cultivate in our lives.
Yeah.
It's not all predetermined.
Okay, here's one that always felt a bit tricky. Body language. Like I've heard crossed arms always means someone's defensive or closed off for a
Universal.
signal, right?
Well, AI that's been trained on tons of visual data expressions, postures from many different cultures is showing these signals are far from universal.
Ah, so not universal.
Nope, they're actually heavily influenced by culture. The meaning can change dramatically depending on where you are and the specific social context.
So my crossed arms example might mean I'm cold in one place and defensive somewhere else.
Precisely. It really underlines how important cultural context is when we try to interpret nonverbal cues. Assuming universality can lead to misunderstandings.
Good point. Okay, let's talk productivity, multitasking. I think a lot of us do it thinking we're being super efficient, juggling emails and calls and everything at once.
Right, the myth is that it saves time, makes you more productive.
Yeah. Does it?
No, not really. AI models studying cognitive switching, how our brain handles jumping between tasks, consistently show the opposite.
Oh,
Multitasking actually leads to more errors and makes us slower overall compared to just focusing on one thing at a time.
slower, even if it feels faster.
Yep. It's like trying to have two important conversations simultaneously, yet missing key parts of both. There's real cognitive cost to constantly shifting your attention.
So trying to do too much at once is actually counterproductive.
Huh, pretty much. Focus wins.
Okay, this next one is incredibly important and sadly carries so much stigma. The idea that people living with mental illness are inherently more violent.
Such a deeply harmful and inaccurate stereotype.
Yeah.
AI analysis, looking at vast amounts of data crime statistics, mental health records consistently shows that mental illness itself is not a strong predictor of violence.
So what is a predictor then?
Factors like socioeconomic status, substance abuse issues, a history of trauma, those are far more significant indicators. It's crucial we separate the illness from the idea of dangerousness.
It's just so vital to challenge those kinds of damaging beliefs. Having a mental health condition doesn't automatically make someone a threat.
Absolutely not. We need to focus on the actual factors that contribute to violence, not perpetuate unfounded fears and stigma based on diagnosis.
Right. Okay, here's a common piece of advice. Don't let emotions cloud your judgment. The idea that logic and emotion are enemies.
Yeah, the cool, rational ideal versus messy feelings.
Exactly. Is that right?
Well, AI models, looking at how we actually make decisions, are revealing a much more integrated picture.
Meaning.
Meaning, far from being obstacles, emotions often play a really vital role in guiding us towards good choices, especially when things are uncertain. Our feelings help us prioritize, figure out what we value, and ultimately make sound judgments.
Wow. So emotions aren't just static we need to filter out. They're actually part of the signal.
You could say that. They provide essential information that feeds into our rational thinking. They're not the enemy of reason. They often work together.
Okay, let's touch on therapy. I think many people imagine therapy has to involve this deep dive into childhood trauma to be effective.
That's definitely one common perception.
Yeah.
And exploring the past can be very valuable for many people, absolutely.
Yeah.
But AI-powered tools, like some cognitive behavioral therapy chatbots, are showing that present-focused techniques can also be highly effective.
Like what kind of techniques?
Things like learning to track your thoughts, challenging negative thinking patterns, developing coping skills for right now. Research on these tools shows they can really help with things like depression and anxiety without necessarily spending years digging into early childhood.
That's really interesting. So effective help can also focus squarely on the here and now.
Yes, and AI is actually playing a role in making those kinds of evidence-based, present-focused approaches more accessible.
And finally, this one might give some folks a bit of hope. The idea that your personality is basically set in stone once you hit 30.
Yes, you can't teach an old dog new tricks applied to personality.
Pretty much. Is it true?
Well, the long-standing belief was that our core traits were largely fixed. But AI models tracking people over decades using data from social media, wearables, self-reports, all sorts of things are painting a different picture. That personality traits can change. Things like how conscientious you are or how open you are to new experiences. These can evolve throughout life, often in response to major life events or even just through conscious effort.
So we're not necessarily stuck being the same person we were in our 20s. There's still room for growth and change later on.
Absolutely. The data suggests our personalities are more dynamic, more adaptable than we previously thought.
Wow. Okay. We've covered a lot of ground, debunked quite a few myths here. If we try to sort of boil it all down, what's the big takeaway from all this AI-powered myth busting?
I think the overarching message is that AI is giving us these incredibly powerful data-backed insights, and they're really challenging many long-held, maybe comfortable assumptions about how our minds work. It's fundamentally upgrading our understanding of ourselves.
It feels like maybe these myths stuck around because they were simple, right? Easy answers.
Exactly. Neat little boxes.
But now we have tools that let us see and maybe start to appreciate the true complexity, the beautiful, messy complexity of being human.
Which leads to a really fascinating question for you listening right now, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Which of your own beliefs about the mind, maybe ones you didn't even realize you held, might be worth revisiting in light of all this? Because this interaction between AI and psychology, it's only going to continue. And it promises, I think, even more surprising discoveries about ourselves down the road.
Definitely something to chew on. Thanks so much for taking this deep dive with us today. It's been fascinating exploring this intersection of artificial intelligence and the ever-evolving science of us.